The noise is not going away anytime soon, okay? The Brandon Aiyuk stuff and actually, as we are just 16 seconds into the show, 16 seconds into the show, breaking news from Adam Schefter. This is hilarious, by the way.
Yeah, back and forth all day long.
Breaking news from Adam Schefter. Steelers and 49ers re-engaged in conversations midday today regarding Brandon Aiyuk per league sources. As of Monday night, the 49ers and Steelers talk stalled, but there have been further conversations today in an ever-fluid situation that still involves other teams as well. Okay, so that was literally 16 seconds into the start of the show. This is hilarious.
As we were coming on, we're both like, we better put our phones on the table in case anything happens. That's a great way to start the show.
My name is Chris Halicke. This is Greg Macafee. Thank you so much for joining the Southside Beat here on the DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcasting Network and our Steelers YouTube channel. It has been a whirlwind of a 36 hours or so. Either way, going back to yesterday, the social media stuff was going ridiculous. We talked about it on yesterday's show. It wasn't quite like there were some people coming out, some insiders coming out and saying, oh, this is a done deal and everything like that. Like, no, it's not a done deal. Doesn't mean that it can't happen. Doesn't mean that whenever they were saying done deal that there was no chance that it could happen. There was still a chance. But, you know, it got to the point where last night a trusted reporter out of the Bay Area did say that the 49ers had a framework in place for a trade with the Browns and the Patriots on a trade for Brandon Aiyuk, and that the Steelers were pretty much out of it because they would not acquiesce to the trade demands. Yeah. And as soon as I saw that, as soon as I read that, I immediately thought this seems like a ploy from the 49ers to try to get the Steelers to up the price, because I think if Brandon Aiyuk wanted to play in either Cleveland or New England,
it would have been done.
He would already be there. And so we know that Aiyuk wants to play in Pittsburgh. We know that Pittsburgh and Washington were his two primary destinations that he was looking for if he wasn't going to stay in San Francisco. And then here we are. And it's funny because, like, we're having lunch. Yeah. And we get back from covering practice, which, yes, we'll get into actual practice stuff today. But we were getting back from practice, and we see that Adam Schefter went on Pat McAfee and said, Steelers not likely. And so we're just kind of like, okay, this might be it. Like we might like this might actually finally be it. The Steelers are out of it as long as the Brandon Aiyuk stuff just gets put to rest. And then while we're at lunch, Ian Rappaport goes on NFL Network and says the Steelers are for sure still in it. And it's just like, this will never stop. It's really, really funny. And Stephen A here says Omar's holding strong. And I would that's how I would probably put it. I've got my own thoughts, Greg.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of Omar holding strong, I mean, we've known him to be a very patient general manager.
Justin Fields.
Yeah, he's not going to give up anything more than what he thinks the trade is worth it. And I think that's what was reported yesterday when they were considered out of the running for it because the demand was too high. And that's when the reports started coming out to probably try to get them back into it or put some public pressure on them at least. But, you know, we've known Omar to be very patient in these situations, and I think that's what he's doing. I mean, it's not a matter of, you know, if it will get done or when it will get done. You know, it's all up in the air. But the Steelers are in you know, a good situation in terms of financially. And, you know, we'll see what happens as it goes on. But obviously these things are going to continue to go kind of back and forth until something happens.
William says Chris is giddy. This is actually entertainment today. This is truly entertaining. Of course, like as reporters, we have to, you know, constantly track the news, constantly track what's going on. I've got feelers out to anybody who would probably give me information. I'm not expecting them to be like, oh, let me get Chris the information before anybody else. But, you know, I've still got feelers out. So, but of course, whenever you have national guys, like yesterday, it was one thing because you had a lot of insiders on Twitter you know, saying their things that this is a done deal. Now you actually have Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport and Tom Pelissero and all the other NFL Network guys actually coming in and reporting news on this stuff, and these are guys who are more plugged in than anyone else when it comes to this kind of stuff. And so, and Steve asked a good question here, because this is where I kind of tried to deduce actual information here. And Steve asked, should the Browns even afford to pay Aiyuk? And I would just say I have my doubts, because you look at their cap space this year. Their cap space this year looks great, their cap space looks amazing. $29.6 million. It's great. Next year, nearly $60 million over the cap. Like, I don't see it. I don't see how it would work for Cleveland. I just don't. The Patriots, I don't see how that would work. They can afford to pay them. They can afford to give the 49ers pretty much whatever they want, and it would be more attractive than what the Steelers could give, because, well, shoot, their draft picks would be more attractive than the Steelers because they're a worse team. But is Brandon Aiyuk going to want to go play for a team that has no chance of winning a Super Bowl? I doubt it. So I think, just based off of those things, that I think that the Steelers, if there's a trade, is the most likely scenario here. But I still have my doubts. I still think that there's a part of – I think ultimately the 49ers had their way, that they would keep Brandon Aiyuk. I think if they truly had their way, the 49ers would keep Brandon Aiyuk. I don't think they want to get rid of him. I think any trade package that they were to get back would not be an equivalent return for what Brandon Aiyuk brings to this team, especially just this season. But if they're backed into a corner, if they've now made up their minds that a trade is going to happen, then we'll see what happens. But the Steelers definitely have the room to do it. I don't foresee the actual contract being an issue. I foresee the asking price and the trade being an issue.
Yeah, I think that's where the stall is for the most part.
Yeah. It's been fun. It's been a lot of fun here. Let's see. Swan2696 says this drama is a lot like a ride at Kennywood.
Pretty much.
And so this is it's a lot of fun. This is so much fun for me. It's entertainment for me. But lo and behold, like here we are still waiting. So that's where we're going to kind of leave it for right now. We can probably try to re-engage this. We're not going to make this report or this podcast too long. We need to get back. We have some updating to do on the site in our Steelers feed. We're in the middle of it whenever we went live here. So we'll get that stuff updated. I'm writing on Zach Kazani spoke today. Said some really good things. That is already uploaded to our YouTube channel here. So once the show ends, go watch it. It was a really, really good interview. Said some really good things about wanting to get this receiver room back to playing Steeler football. Said some really good things about George Pickens, especially with the way those two are butting heads, or at least appeared to be butting heads early on. Zach absolutely brushed that off. So good to see that. But also some other takeaways from practice.
Yeah, we'll have some stuff from Russell Wilson. Probably was involved in practice the most he's been so far through training camp. He took the first snap of 7 shots. So I'll have kind of a breakdown of his performance today. Look at what Justin Fields did as well, and then I was able to have a good conversation with Corey Trice, kind of follow up on what Chris talked to him about late last week. So we'll have something in the feed on that. And then we were able to talk to Pat Freiermuth today as well. So we'll have a little conversation on that. No update on the contract is what he said. But I'm sure, we'll see how that kind of plays out over the next week or so. And before the season starts. So we'll see how that goes. But, a lot of content coming that will be, in the Steelers feed and on the website here in the next couple hours.
Yeah, it's there was actually practice today.
Yeah,
and actually, Greg got a picture of him. Omar Khan was on the field.
He was on the field at the end. I think he most of the time he is on the field at the end of practices.
Yeah. But
I was kind of keeping an eye out for him all day today, and saw him. I saw him at the end of practice. There was a lot of I don't know. I used the word stars in the Steelers feed today in terms of regarding to Derek Shelton and Ben Cherington were at practice today. There's a couple people that didn't like that. Jay Glazer and Brett Michaels were also in the house today, so it was definitely I'm going to say a star-studded, popular people.
Sierra was there again today too.
I didn't see Sierra.
She was down whenever she was here the first time. She spent some time down near one of the end zones, the end zone to the right. If you sit in the stands at Chuck Noll Field, the end zone to the right, and she was down kind of at that end the way she was last time too. So yeah, she was there again today. Brett Michaels today, Jay Glazer.
Yep.
I want to say Baldinger was there too. I want to say maybe.
I'm not sure.
I thought I saw him, but maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe it was somebody who looked like Baldinger. So, but either way, it was a good practice. It was a physical practice. Zach Frazier, lit up. Danny Bishop, some WVU on WVU violence there. It was funny.
It was loud. I mean, there's a lot of people. There was a lot of people that didn't see it, but everyone heard it. If you didn't see it, you heard it.
It was a loud pop.
It was towards the end of practice, and it was
good.
Yeah.
But when it comes to practice, though, a lot of the same stuff continues to stand out to me. Obviously, there were some injury updates from Mike Tomlin. I think one of them is pretty significant.
Yeah.
As long as it's not too significant of an injury, but could be one that really affects the Steelers.
Yeah, that was Alex Highsmith. He has a groin injury. Tomlin didn't go too far into it. Just kind of mentioned it during his media availability, but did say that we're in the dog days of summer, so it's not. I don't think it's anything too concerning at the moment. We'll see if he bounces back tomorrow or how it is moving forward. He also said Nate Meaders had, I think it was a hamstring. DeMarvin Leal is hurt as well. He didn't go too far into it. Just said that he had something as well. And there was one more person. I can't remember who it was off the top of my head. Let's see if I can pull it up real quick. I just can't remember it off the top of my head.
No, you're good. There were a few different injuries that Mike Tomlin mentioned today. So
Tyler Murray.
Okay, yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So but practice itself. It's funny because I think at the beginning of practice, you had a lot of people still continuing to be like, okay, what's going on with this Aiyuk stuff. But I think once practice began, I think as soon as 7 shots began, it was kind of like, okay, we're getting into the practice now. For example, by the time we got back from practice and we saw the original Schefter stuff on Pat McAfee show, that had been 45-50 minutes old. So
and then Patrick Queen was back today. He was in pads. He didn't participate as much as he normally does. I think Chris and I were discussing they're probably going to start dialing him back a little bit heading into the season, as they should. He's one of those veteran guys. Like Isaac Siomalo, he's a guy that gets a lot of veteran days. I think Patrick Queen will start kind of getting those as time goes on, just because he's getting into the later stages of his career, and he's the quarterback of the defense. He's the guy they need out there. So as far as it goes with him, is if he's ready for the regular season, I think that's where they'll play it easy with him. Cordell Patterson was also. We've seen him working out on the side fields a lot throughout the beginning stages of training camp. Today was the first time I've seen him run full bore. He was, going side to side, right next to Patrick Queen, actually. So I think he's, Mike Tomlin hasn't said anything about him yet, but I think he's, in the stages of getting back. We'll see how that goes over the next week or two. I'm sure they'll try to ease him back in, as he's another one of those players who's towards the end of his career, and they want him fully healthy. When time comes.
It's definitely, but the good thing is that of all the players that kind of did some things that stood out, I liked what I saw from Jonathan Ward today. Now, granted, it's 1 day is a pretty small sample size in a training camp that has 16 practices, but I do think that if there is a fourth running back emerging, I think Jonathan Ward is the guy. But it's not like a situation in which Jalen Warren was coming in as an undrafted free agent 2 years ago and just turned everybody's head and be like, "Whoa, who is this guy?" And
I think him, Dejan Edwards, and LaMichael P. Ryan have all had flashes throughout camp on different days. I mean, there's a day last week where Edwards was pretty good. Jonathan Ward had the long run today. P. Ryan had a couple good runs today as well. So I think it's definitely, one kind of spikes, the other one spikes. So it's kind of been a balanced effort between those guys on the depth chart.
Sebastian says Queen being a 5-year veteran when he's only 24 years old is crazy, and that's why I think it's that is probably outside of if a Brandon Aiyuk or any other type of trade does actually happen for Pittsburgh, that is the marquee signing or acquisition of this offseason, because it adds to a position in which the Steelers have desperately needed to be better at. And it improves the way that they can play up front. It improves the way the guys can play in the secondary. Mike Tomlin called him the quarterback of the defense, and that's exactly what he is. And whenever you see him like going hard and going hard and going hard, and then Friday Night Lights, it pretty much hit a boiling point with that backs on backers, because that was as intense as I've seen, even including fights. That was about as intense as I've seen anything happen in practice, because even though there weren't really any punches thrown or anything like that, the emotion along with that was just, like I said, it reached a boiling point. And since then, they've definitely dialed it back with Patrick Queen, and they should, because he is very, very important to this defense now. They need him to be healthy. They need him on the field. They just that is the okay. Hold on a second. Okay, it's nothing from Schefter. Okay, just wanted to make sure, because
it's just this is what he did last week's season.
Anytime we see Schefter and anything Steelers, like it's got to be talked about. So it's just fun, because that's where we are. We're waiting for texts. We're waiting for Twitter notifications, whatever it is. So, Chris Lynn asks, what's the plan for the show when the Ramon show moves to 3 p.m.? We'll figure all that stuff out. We're not worried about that. We're actually, DK was here at practice today too, and we were discussing a lot of different things that we're going to be doing with the multimedia, with the podcast, with the shows, with our game coverage. We have a lot of stuff in the works. Nothing is finalized, nothing's done, but we have a lot of stuff in the works for how we're going to be doing this. And trust me, I'm as excited as ever when it comes to our Steelers coverage, because I think it's going to be phenomenal. And I'm not just saying that because I'm trying to be a good company guy. I really am excited about it.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's in the works that you guys will like. Once we get it going.
A lot of stuff when it comes to. I mean, we've gotten a lot of positive reaction with the way we're updating the feeds during practices. Obviously, that can't happen whenever we get to the closed practices on the south side. That's just not allowed. But we will obviously continue to have the feed chock full of stuff. We're going to continue to obviously do a lot of things in the written word. Like, for example, today I'm going to write about this receiver group. Since Zagazani talked, who knows if there ends up being a trade for Aiyuk. But even if there's not, like that, from what these guys said today, like they don't necessarily feel like they need a Brandon Aiyuk. Now, obviously, like they're all saying, like, that's not my decision. If they make that trade, then great. But we are confident in ourselves, and even outside of that, like they're going to say stuff like that. But even outside of that, knowing the way that Zach Azzani's approaching coaching this position, it is, even if they don't land a Brandon Aiyuk or a DK Metcalf or anybody else, it seems like it's a position that's going to be better because it's being coached better.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Let's see here. Let's see. Lori asks, couldn't Arthur Smith's offense adapt to having another weapon? I think the one thing I have constantly tried to pump into people's minds ever since Arthur Smith was hired, because we look at what he did in Tennessee, we look at what he did in Atlanta, and we just think, okay, he's a wide zone guy. This is the way he's going to run things. I don't think that like yes, there are going to be certain parts of his offense that are just going to remain constant. That they all have an identity, and I think the main identity of an Arthur Smith offense is just physicality. They're going to be tough to play against no matter what, but there are different ways that you can do that. I don't necessarily think that if they were to get a Brandon Aiyuk, I think a coordinator like Arthur Smith is going to figure out a way to work George Pickens and Brandon Aiyuk into.
Arthur Smith is a very creative offensive mind. If you give him another weapon, he's going to go crazy coming up with new concepts and new schemes to kind of get that guy involved and get him the ball. There's no, this is what I have and this is what I'm going to do. You'll see this offense kind of evolve, I think, as the season goes on.
And listen, Brandon Aiyuk is a good blocking receiver. George Pickens he might not be, Allen Robinson, what he was last year in terms of being willing to stick his nose into the C gap every now and then. But George Pickens has put a few guys on his back before. Van Jefferson is more than a willing blocker. I think there are ways that Arthur Smith can do this. And one thing that I think Arthur Smith gets a bad rap, he just gets a bad rap because of what happened the last 3 years in Atlanta. But one thing that I think we have to remember here is that he got that job in Atlanta because of what he had done previously. When Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay and when they were having all their success with the wide zone offense, like tearing defenses apart with this wide zone offense, Arthur Smith was right there with them.
Yeah.
Arthur Smith was offensive coordinator of the Titans for 2 years and put up like great offenses, like league leading offenses. And I would put Arthur Smith right in that same category. Now, Shanahan and McVay have altered their styles. They've, especially the Rams, they went to, even though they use 11 personnel almost exclusively, they still went to more gap concepts last year, predominantly gap concepts away from the wide zone stuff. If McVay and Shanahan are smart enough to do it, then maybe Arthur Smith is smart enough to adjust his offensive system to not only overall trends in the NFL, but also the personnel that he has on hand.
Yeah, I mean, I think you just see him kind of just enjoying being able to install this offense and kind of get creative with the weapons he has in place and everything like that. And the one thing I think seen the most of is he's hard on his players. He holds them to a different type of standard, and the players kind of enjoy that oversight coming into this season. But he's definitely getting creative, kind of installing this offense, and you see the different packages that he's putting out there and the motions he's putting in, and it's definitely going to be interesting come the regular season.
Chris asks, how's the chemistry been so far for on the offensive line? Ramon says it takes a while to come together, but obviously sooner rather than later is better. I will say it's hard to gauge in just the training camp setting because they haven't even played a preseason game yet, and
a lot of moving parts and everyone's kind of moving around different slots and everything like that.
Yeah, because then you have like for example, today Isaac Seumalo was on a vet day, so Spencer Anderson goes in at left guard, and then there were times at different points today where Dan Moore was on the left and Broderick Jones was on the right, and then Broderick Jones was on the left and Troy Fautano was on the right, and then Dan Moore was on the left and Troy Fautano was on the right, and there were just all kinds of mixing and matching. So there are a number of guys getting certain numbers of reps. It's hard to say that like, the chemistry is being built, in a great way or anything like that. I would just say that, okay, for example, I pulled aside one Steelers official today after practice and I was like, how's things going with the offensive line? And, this is a completely, off the record conversation, but vibes were high. That's the most I can say. I can't say things that were off the record, but but vibes are high. And that's I don't expect to hear anything different, but at the same time, who knows what happens. But in terms of trying to gauge chemistry before they even play their first preseason game, it's difficult to we need actual game film to be able to kind of see this stuff. So let's see here. Sebastian says, say what you want about last year's offense, but we had some great gap schemes that helped us win a lot of games. And that's one of the reasons why I honestly feel that, like, yes, Arthur Smith comes in with the wide zone offense, but I don't think that he's so married to doing things the way he's been doing them, especially in Atlanta, because Atlanta and Pittsburgh don't have the same personnel. They have different – now, granted, brought some guys from Atlanta, brought Van Jefferson over, brought Michael Pruitt over, but, Russell Wilson and Justin Fields are not the quarterbacks that, Arthur Smith had. George Pickens is not like any receiver that Atlanta has. Now, Atlanta has Drake London, and I don't think the Steelers have a receiver like Drake London. So they're different teams. And so I think Arthur Smith is going to come in with an ability to just focus on the offense and really make an offense, install an offense that fits to what he wants to do schematically, but also fits the personnel. Lifted One says, I feel like I'm living in Groundhog Day with this Brandon Aiyuk talk. And listen, I don't necessarily enjoy having to always talk about this, but whenever you have actual NFL insiders for NFL Network and ESPN talking about this stuff, and now starting to say that the Steelers and 49ers are engaging or re-engaging in trade talks, then you know that something is going down, whether it be a trade to the Pittsburgh Steelers or to another team, or maybe the 49ers just decide, you know what, we would like to trade Brandon, but the Steelers aren't giving enough. Even though he wants to play there, the Steelers aren't giving enough for us to trade him. And we may have a trade in place with Cleveland or New England, but he doesn't want to go there, so just screw it. We're going to keep him.
Yeah.
But either way, we have to talk about it because it's going to be a topic of conversation among fans. If you just go to Twitter, you can see the number of fans that are just talking about it.
We'll see the rumors flying.
And it's funny because like as soon as what was said earlier today, when it looked like the Steelers weren't a likely scenario, it was like everybody was throwing in the towel. And then, lo and behold, the NFL Network guys come out an hour later or so, and
when it comes to being out of it, I don't think necessarily the Steelers were ever out of it to begin with. Just because of if it comes to an asking price, you never know if that asking price could come down, especially right now, and that's especially when these reports come out is to get that asking price to be higher. So I mean, whether they're in or out of it, I don't think until the trade is done. I don't think they're ever out of it.
I don't think any team is really ever out of it until, like you said, a trade actually happens. Or the only other way is if Brandon Aiyuk and his agent pretty much tell and make it known, like tell Cleveland or tell New England or tell whatever team, we're not signing there.
Yeah.
And then and I think, at least when it comes to the trade aspect of it, because there's a lot of different ways that this is not just a two to tango. This really is a three-way dance here.
Yeah.
I think that at least Aiyuk and his representation are at least honoring the 49ers aspect of it, of they have to do what's best for them in terms of a trade. And so they're not going to publicly come out and say, oh, yeah, we've told Cleveland no.
Yeah.
Or we've told, like, they're actually going to come out, like, because Ryan Williams has not been afraid to say stuff. There have been insiders that have reported stuff months ago, and he immediately quote tweeted and was like, yeah, no, you need to get better sources. This is not true. So, but either way, I do think one way or another, Stephen A. says it here, regardless of where he goes, I do believe this is coming to a head. I agree. I don't know if it's today. I don't know if it's tomorrow or a week from now, but I do think that noise is picking up for a reason. I do think that the 49ers are at least doing their, I'm going to use the phrase again, doing their due diligence when it comes to trying to honor the trade request for Aiyuk, but not shooting themselves in the foot either. So Stephen A. saying something about a certain radio personality. I'm just going to ignore that. So, but yeah, either way, this honestly has to be a topic of conversation because it's just how it goes. It's how the calendar goes. It's how especially on an off day, that's when all of this picked up yesterday, was when the Steelers weren't having practice and all that stuff. So it's, you got to have stuff to talk about. You would think on an off day there would be conversations going on and things of that nature. And that's how all this stuff kind of picks up pace and everything like that. So yeah, I think it's just the nature of the business, especially when there's a player that has demanded a trade, obviously wants to play in Pittsburgh, has said it before, and it's just, I think it's just a matter of the price that's being asked and the contract that will be discussed and things. I have nothing to actually tangibly report about a contract between the Steelers and Aiyuk, but I have heard at least rumblings. That's the best way I can describe it. Rumblings that the contract is not the hang-up here. And I'll go with what I reported 11 days ago in our Friday Insider, that the main hang-up, the main thing that's going to get in the way of any trade is going to be the asking price, because Omar Khan is willing to wait it out. And I believe that Omar Khan, that it's very likely, I'm not saying this is what's happening, but I could see that this is how it's playing out, that Omar Khan knows, even with the report that came out last night, that if this is, some sort of way for the 49ers to try to force the Steelers to up their asking price, Omar's going to be like, you know what? We're willing to make the trade, but at our price. And if it's not at our price, we're not going to make the trade, period. Like, we feel like that there is either another option we could go with, or that we're comfortable with who we have in-house right now, at least in terms of, like, what we're willing to give up. Maybe the 49ers soften to that. Maybe there's another little tiny, how the NBA has their soft cap.
Yeah.
Omar's like right here. He's like, I'm not willing to go over this, but maybe he's got that little luxury tax portion of his, like, maybe I'm kind of willing to go here a little bit higher, but I'm still not over my actual threshold.
Yeah.
Who knows what that is? Who knows if that's an actual first-round pick? I don't know. I think that if there's a way that Omar can pull this off without giving up a first-round pick, it's a heist. Like, I genuinely believe that. That's my opinion on it. I don't know if that's actually going to happen. I'm not hanging my hat on it, but I think that it's a heist. If you do James Daniels in a second, I think that's a slam dunk of a trade, in my opinion. But either way, I believe there's one thing that I truly believe, and I can close on this, is that Omar Khan is not going to budge. He's going to have his price point, and he's not going to do something that he feels like is going to hurt the team just to get a guy. So that's
he never has, and he never has. So I mean,
no.
Like he has the track record of being as patient as possible until he gets what he thinks.
And it's August 6th.
Yeah,
like it's not. It's
Mm-hmm.
They haven't even played their first preseason game yet. Like, this doesn't have to be done today or this week. That's the thing, is that all of this stuff could really seem like it's coming to a head, and then we could still be talking about this 2 weeks from now.
Yeah.
It's just the way that this could all play out, because again, Omar, it would not surprise me if he's just sitting there going, yeah, I'm not, like, we may agree to this and this on the trade, but then this is the sticking point. I'm sorry, we're just not willing to move off of it, whatever it is. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. I'm not going to sit here and try to predict. I'm just going to stick by what I've reported, that the Steelers have felt that they're convinced that they're going to get one of these guys, and maybe it's because maybe Omar really kind of does have a crystal ball and he can see how things are going to play out. I don't know. Either way, thank you so much for joining the show today. I really appreciate it. Sorry we didn't talk more about practice, but whenever all this stuff is happening on the trade market, we kind of have to talk about it. So, but definitely our Steelers feed is already full of some stuff. We're adding more stuff from practice. I'm writing about the receivers, about Zach Azani. Van Jefferson spoke today too, so I got some good stuff there. Greg's got some more stuff from other takeaways from practice. It's going to be, we have plenty of stuff on DKPittsburghSports.com right now. All the content's free, so go read it. It's all there. Thank you so much for supporting us, supporting this show, and we'll catch you guys tomorrow. And maybe if Brandon Aiyuk trade actually happens, maybe we'll do an emergency pod. Maybe. We'll see. Either way, catch you guys on the flippity flip. See you later.
See you later, guys.